Okay. Woo! All right, that was a good one. Now we're going to keep it going. Okay. Trauma. What do you mean that you
So
don't
like
believe in it?
in my defense though, I've in this season I haven't been as invested in literature, in the growth and philosophy. So my points may not be as strong
Okay.
as
Well,
they
tell me
once
what
were.
you
And
what do you
ironically,
mean by it?
two of my favorite books that introduced me to Adler psychology are right here. Right.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like the Ikigai, which is a Japanese philosophy, but this is my introduction to Adlerian psychology.
Mike.
And this was the introduction into Adlerian psychology. And within his practice, he talks about how trauma's not real.
Okay.
And I resonate with it. Duality.
Yes.
I'm not at a point, I may get there, may never get there, where I will say trauma doesn't exist. So I don't ever say trauma doesn't exist. What I say is my belief in trauma is not there,
Right.
right? And I wholeheartedly believe in that. And I wish I had the definition of trauma so I can really dive into it, but I ain't gonna do it.
Well,
But
I'll look it up.
but
We're on the behind the scenes stuff now.
let's see.
Okay.
Because
Trauma definition.
let me see. Because I may have never
Trauma
done this.
Trauma is deeply distressing or a disturbing experience. It can also be a physical injury, but it says trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, often leading to lasting negative effects on their physical, emotional, and psychological well being.
Perfect. So that word overwhelming is where I think I can resonate with more about the belief system within Adlerian psychology. Because overwhelming, although many times out of our control, and this kind of blends in what Stoicism and the Four Agreements does, right? And Adlerian preaches a lot about, not necessarily a lot about, but he preaches about wasted time and energy, and where does your energy go? And the word overwhelming in the definition of trauma, right, is an experience. Do we experience things? Yes, 100%, right? Are all those things up to us or are within our control? No. But to allow them to overwhelm is a choice. Scary, right? And it takes accountability to be present in the moment of you allowing that to happen. That's what I
You
resonate
keep
with.
pausing like you're waiting for me to say something.
Because it's like these are unpopular opinion because westernized civilization has been preached, has been force fed Sigmund Freud. Like so it's this. I don't, most people say they don't argue sports and other things. I don't argue religion in, because one, I've lived outside the country. I don't argue religion and philosophy. I love conversations about it, but I am very skeptical with conversations because people are so closed off to conversation.
Very true.
And a lot of times people don't have the knowledge. You obviously, that's not a worry, but they don't have even the knowledge to have the conversation, and it's all opinion, baby, and subjective. My These are also my opinions and subjective, also,
Yeah.
and I
Well, I'm
respect
just
them.
looking to have a conversation. I'm not looking to fight with you.
Oh yeah, no, 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 no. Of course not, of course not. And there's some people whose like subjective opinions have no wherewithal of factual information, so that's where it's just like,
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, so like because of the energy, like Adler psychology to me and what it res, and like I said, it's been a while since I kind of read these books and kind of dove back into that psychology specifically. But it preaches so much about present moments, and choice, and how that every there's things out of our control, in our control, but ultimately where we are is up to our choice. And he speaks to how trauma, which most people use it, is, and this is my gripe with religion as well. I'm not going to dive into that, but a lot of people use it as a crutch or an excuse or something as of that, and they become their traumas
Mm.
when, and that's becoming your trauma speaks to me as that word in the definition of overwhelming. When you become that thing, that's where it becomes overwhelming, and you have a choice to become your trauma or not. And that's why I say I'm not going to say trauma does not exist, but my belief in trauma is not there. My belief is in choice and present moment. Because, and this is through lived behavior from experiences of my siblings and through myself. But like I've seen what becoming your trauma and choosing your trauma looks like versus not. Nobody's perfect, right? But I solely believe no matter what's in your control or out of your control, where you are in life today is 100% up to the choices you've made,
Okay.
good or
All
bad,
right. All
right?
right. I want
Something
to
could be. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to share my perspective on it and then
Uh-huh.
see what your thoughts are.
Hmm.
Okay. So, I was brought up in trauma, and it took
Hmm.
me time in therapy to actually be able to say those words. I was raised by a narcissistic mother, and
Hmm.
it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I learned that the way I was raised was not normal, because you
Hmm.
get the don't talk about what goes on in this house and all this kind of stuff. There was physical abuse, but it wasn't like every day, and I like had a fear of going home kind of a thing. But like my mom would fly off of the handle
Hmm.
over the smallest thing. But as I got older, I understood the smallest thing was anytime she didn't get her way. And
Hmm.
so in order to prevent things getting thrown and being yelled at and being called out of your name and getting this close and you can feel her breath, like all those kinds of things, you just learn to, okay, just be small, don't
Hmm.
do this. If she's yelling, and even if you didn't do it, just apologize, just make it stop. And so to live in that for 30 years, because I'm estranged with my mother. I don't communicate with her. Love her, but she hasn't done the work on her mental health. And so for that, I have to protect myself.
Hmm.
Not super popular in the black community, but, you know, I am
Yeah.
fine with being the
You're you.
villain in whoever's story.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the one who has to live every day.
Yeah.
So I have done a lot of healing work. I have done a lot of sitting in and being still and facing, because I was cool prior to therapy, because I wasn't thinking like, oh man, like I really grew up in trauma. I really have X, Y, and Z. But as I was in therapy, I got to learn and see, okay, my behaviors stem from what I grew up in. So
Hmm.
even there was a time, maybe like last year, I was in a grocery store, and I'm years into therapy. Like I've done some good work, Chauncey. And I was standing in the grocery store. I was there with someone, but they weren't around me. And there was a mother who was her kid was doing something. It was like those candy things and the scooper thing. He grabbed the scooper. Oh, I know what it was. It was the coffee cups. Like you could. I was at Publix, so you could pull your coffee cup out of one of those like long
Oh
sleeve
yeah, to
things.
like
But
make
you,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So he was like pushing it, or he was doing something with it. And the mom that was maybe 6 feet from me,
Hmm.
she said something like "Stop it," or she
Yeah.
like got really like up on him, and it made me freeze. So I'm like,
Hmm.
that wasn't a choice. That was my body's reaction of remembering the score and remembering the trauma. And it's like, even her lips getting tight and just like
Yeah.
all of that just brought it right back. I'm in my 30s, but I'm like, I'm 7 right now. And I'm hoping that I don't get hit. And I'm hoping that like I have to remind myself in those moments, you're safe. You're
Hmm.
safe. Nobody's gonna hurt you, and go ahead. And but I am very much of the mindset of like, but this is my shit, this is
Yeah.
my stuff from my childhood. And so I'm very intentional about making sure that I don't make other people pay for it.
Hmm.
During my time in therapy, learning about things like passive aggression, I never
Yeah.
set out to I want to be passive aggressive, but
Yeah.
learning those kinds of things from the parent who is a narcissist and who is present the majority of the time. My dad, he's always been in my life, but he has remained living in Cleveland when my mom moved us here to Charlotte.
Okay.
And so I always thank him for being the same parent and for loving us and allowing me to know like this is safe love. This is it would be
Mhm.
odd that like something would happen, like I would spill something when I was with my dad or something would break and the response was like, "Oh, well like let's get a mop and let's clean it up or let's do X, Y, and Z." And I'm just like, "That's it?" Like
Yeah.
there's no wrath that's gonna come down and that you're gonna smite me. Like there's nothing. You're just like, let's just clean it up. That was
Yeah.
foreign to me. So I did get a vision of like what was foreign and not normal. And then what was normal, which was me living in trauma. And I didn't realize that it was like you had a traumatic childhood. Like I'm like,
Mhm.
that's and then like even now, like I still think like I
That bad.
it wasn't like that bad, but in me saying that and shrinking my experience, um, I had to learn that for you to live 20 plus years of your life just constantly in the state of is she going to hit me, is she going to
Yeah.
be upset about this if I don't do this, if I'm not perfect, so like I'm working on like my perfection complex and all that stuff because it's like I don't want the wrath and like to grow up in that state of just always being like, I'm just doing this.
Yeah.
I promise I'll make A's. I won't do X, Y, and Z. I'll be perfect. And to live like that every single day, like your system experiences trauma and the way that your brain operates and functions. People who survive or have extended experiences with narcissists, the the way that their brain is wired is different because it has been traumatized. Even me working with a colleague um, who was helping me with my book and all of this kind of thing, he was a narcissist, and I have to start recognizing that. But I'm when you get into the realm of a narcissist and you've survived a narcissist, it becomes familiar. And you're like, oh, I know
Mhm.
how to navigate this space. Like you can end up in relationships with narcissists because it's familiar, it's
Mhm.
comfortable. You're like, I know how to navigate this space. But this colleague that I was working with, he had cussed at me and gotten really aggressive and all the things. And I thought that it was a successful conversation because when I was talking to my friends, I was like, I was able to calm him down. Like he stopped cursing at me. He X, Y, and Z. And my friends was like, yeah, but he just totally like steamrolled you and disrespected you. And for you all to be, equals in what it is that you're working on, he had absolutely no right to communicate that way. And as a
Yeah.
man, he should not have been cursing that way at you.
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. But my traumatized brain is
I was
thinking,
like,
but
oh,
I got him to calm down and he
yeah.
stopped calling me out my name and he stopped doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm looking at that as a victory. That was not a victory. But I still had the heart palpitations and the shaking, and I had to say to myself to snap myself out of it, he can't hit me. Cuz that's the big thing. Like when people are yelling and cursing and all that stuff in my mind from my childhood, I'm like I'm going to get hit.
Yeah.
And so that helped to calm me down. It's like no matter what you say, you can decide whether you're going to move forward with this person who puts your system in this state. And so, with that experience, I say I have a strong belief in trauma, but the way that you experience the trauma and what you do with it and how you make other people around you either experience it or not, I think that is a choice. What do you think?
So much to unpack there. And almost cry. I believe in like crying as a release. So I'm
Oh,
never
yeah.
against crying. But I
Well,
didn't cry. Of
I was told, well, I basically was like trained to not be able to. Like
course.
what my mom would be
Yeah.
like, don't you dare cry. So now, like if I want to cry at a commercial or something, I'm like, it's okay, I can cry at a commercial. So I cry way more now, but that's from me like having it stifled up for 30
Yeah.
plus years.
I think my wells are dry. I wrote a poem about it a while ago. Anyway, but so much
Poetry
to
too?
unpack there.
Okay.
And I don't need to apologize. Period. And so resonates so much. And I think so like we have similar we have commonalities in our stories. We're very unique. And it's like great to hear because I agree with a lot of things you said. And I also like not disagree, but I have difference of opinions of a lot of things. And we experience a lot of commonalities. So I have a lot of the same symptoms you express. Perfectionism, right? I have to be right.
People pleasing.
People pleasing, not professionalism, perfectionism, and people pleasing. I have to be right. The fear of being wrong, and more so now, what I'm diving into, which is a separate occurrence, which I'm having. I just filmed a short film for, but also led me to my fear of success. I know I don't fear failure. That's not something I fear. I like failure. I want failure. Failure is how you learn. Failure is needed to life. I fear success because for so long I was not worthy. For so long, why am I here? For so long, I wish you weren't born. So now that I am able, now that I am worthy, now that I can lead spaces, I fear being in those positions because I don't belong here. There's no way these people really trust and believe the things I say. I don't know how to accept grace. I don't know what love is. When we said love you, we were a non-physical family. My brothers, so I have 15 brothers and sisters.
Whoa,
Most
whoa,
of them
whoa,
are
whoa,
older.
what? What?
Most of them, it's a very mixed family. So I count my
15.
stepdad, my mom, my stepmom, and my dad. So I count all of them. My dad has the most at 9, but I grew up when I wasn't out the country. I grew up with my mom, stepdad, and my two brothers. So that so that was that. But most of them are older than their 50s, 40s. I didn't really grow up with them. But within
Okay,
my
so you're on the younger end of the
I was
of
the
the
youngest
siblings.
until my dad
Okay.
had two
You're
more 13 years ago. Not no more. But I was the youngest for about 14 years. And my older brother, he lives a life of trauma. He doesn't use those words, but he lives a life of embodying his trauma. Everything is my mother's fault. Everything is her fault. You had us growing up in bad places. You had me stealing. He doesn't say that because that's true, but it's because of the environment I grew up, right? It's because of the, what I'm saying, all of that of why I did these choices. He uses that trauma to fuel his life and ultimately fuel his choices, right? And then you get to my life, and some of the things you said, there's no science behind it. It's very subjective, right? Resonated, and it still felt like a choice to do the things. All of these choices aren't conscious, in my opinion. I don't know. All of these choices aren't conscious, and there's still a decision to be made. So maybe I should not use choice because choice feels like something you're choosing, but a decision is the route you go. When you come to a fork in the road, you have to go left or you have to go right. Ultimately, you make that. And when people make the wrong choice, because we're not, I don't live life out of right or wrong, good or bad, right? Because
their choice.
yeah, it's just a choice. You know what I'm saying? So when people make their, thank you, when people make their choice, and if it's a choice that doesn't resonate with what they wanted the outcome to be, then we resort to, I made that choice out of what's been happening internally or the trauma. And that's what that feels like. Now, this is where I can't completely discredit trauma because I know about the physical body. I know there's muscle trauma. I know there's bone trauma. I know these things are real. So when you get to the brain, it is a muscle. You remember these things. Now, where I decipher that and where I still lean heavily towards avoiding the idea and beliefs of trauma is the phrases of learned helplessness, right? We're making these decisions from trauma, or, and this is where like this could be beating a dead horse because are these the same thing, just different vernaculars because it's different psychologies, right? But is this trauma, right, which is inherent or innate movements, right? Because when you have muscle trauma, it's innate, you can't control it. So are these trauma innate movements that I cannot control? When people yell around me, I shrink because I cannot control it. It's innate. It's
That's
muscle
not a
tissue
choice.
trauma, or is it learned behavior? Because this is the environment I grew up in my entire life for 30 years, right? Because my feeling if it's trauma, you will never be able to escape that. If it's learned behavior or learned helplessness, right? More so learned helplessness is what it is. Then it transitions to learned behavior. You can unlearn that behavior, and that is another choice that you're able to make throughout your life. Now, to get to that choice, you may need therapy. You may need the awareness. You may need the exposure of how to get out of the idea of trauma into the idea that this is a learned helplessness that I cannot consciously decide on this decision, but because my body and because this is what I'm used to, this is the decision that I'm also be making, right? It's not a conscious decision. It's not a choice I want to make, but it's because of what. my body's doing, that's the decision it automatically comes to. And that's where I lean away from trauma, because trauma feels like there's, to me, traumas, there's no, like, you're not escape there. It's here. This is, especially for 30 years, like, it's here. You can't escape that. But you can, in my opinion, you can. And it's up to one, your awareness, your exposure, and your willingness. Once again, a lot of people, I hate speaking to other people when we're talking about things like this, because you have to be within yourself, because that's all you can speak to. I have to take accountability. I have to be aware of the decisions. The idea that I'm here because of the decisions I made, whether I wanted to or not, whether it's right or wrong, and that's why I'm here, whether it's out of my control or in my control. Then I have to take accountability on decisions I make going forward. If I'm in those situations where I don't feel worthy, I have to decide, am I going to allow the trauma, some would say, or am I going to allow that learned helplessness of not feeling worthy to take control of my actions? And I think that's what Adler in psychology speaks more so of, different than Sigmund Freud. It's about the physical actions, because we have to speak, for example, in yoga, I don't speak to spirituality, I don't speak anything. I speak to possibility and I speak to physicality, right? So what's possible for you and what can you physically do? Reach your hands to the sky, spread your fingers, and see what's possible. That's possibilities by seeing what's possible, but it's physicality by actually doing an act to create the possibility. So when we get to Adler psychology, I feel like it speaks more to the action of the decision we make. I'm
Excuse me.
sorry, go ahead.
So it sounds like, and tell me if you're saying like no, it's the totality of it.
Hmm.
And I want you to know I do not have a concrete way of thinking. So you are
Yeah,
teaching me things,
I
and
get
these are
that.
the new ways to consider. Um, what are your, so would you agree that it,
Mhm.
to me it sounds like you have a belief that trauma exists, but you believe that using trauma as a way to not take accountability for things that are within your control is, do you think that's a fair statement to say? Because when you said what you said during the podcast episode, you were saying you don't believe in trauma, and it was
Mhm.
just like, bam. So when we dissect it, you believe that trauma exists, because I'm thinking,
Okay.
people who fought in wars and who have PTSD, like that is trauma that is real. But choosing to just not get a job because, you have this trauma, or you're choosing not to speak to a mental health professional because whatever reason, and then
Yeah.
being like, oh, I'm so messed up, and they be like, it's because of the war. Or if we're talking about our, childhood trauma, and saying, oh, I'm a dirtbag because my dad, was an a-hole to me growing up. And that's what where I'm saying, like, I don't allow, like, I know what my
Yeah.
stuff is. This is my stuff. This is from my childhood. So you don't have to pay for it. And I
Mhm.
think people who do lash out and then it's like, well, I had a messed up childhood. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
We all had something to some
Yeah.
extent.
We
And my
all
mom
have.
wasn't some
Yeah.
tyrant who was like constantly just,
Yeah.
waiting to beat me. Like, in contrast, my mom was loving. She would, rub my hair, and, we'd have great talks, and there, which is why it felt so normal. And it's like, well, it couldn't possibly be
Yeah.
bad because I'm remembering the good things. But the things were so ridiculously violent and over the top and just ridiculous that you can't say anything
Yeah.
besides this was trauma. So what do you think about that? Like, yes, trauma exists, but don't use it as a reason for every freaking thing.
So, like, yes and no.
Okay.
So, not diving into the religious specifically, the reason I don't necessarily claim a religion is slightly similar to how I view trauma, based on what you just said to me, is that
Okay.
people use it as a crutch, right? So that's slightly. So we're not going to dive into religion, but it's slightly because of that. So the reason why I brought the religion up is because I can't sit here and say religion doesn't exist. So like 85%, yes, I agree with that. And this is where I could be, like I said earlier, beating a dead horse. I still kind of fade away from trauma because those things can also still be learned helplessness, right? So in my head, are those things just trauma and I'm just avoiding using the word trauma, right? Because that could be a possibility, right? I'm very open to that possibility. And like I know I'm young. I'm 26. I know I'm very young. I know I picked up 3, 4 books. I read into this. Oh, I like this, right? I resonate with it, right? So I know that I don't have the answers now, and I also know I will never have the answer. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so that could be a possibility of like, is trauma just learned? Like, is learned helplessness and learned be like behave all that just my way of saying trauma without saying trauma because I hate the trigger word? That's a possibility.
Could be.
Or those things are completely different and they don't mean the same thing. So like I'm curious to see what learned helplessness is because when we use so before we looked up the definition of trauma and you said that statement, I'd agree. But then once you brought up the definition in that one word, overwhelming, that really is what keeps me that extra 15% of not agreeing with the statement because overwhelming is an emotion and emotions fade. Emotions are,
But trauma stays.
but if it eventually fades, how do like, is
But
there a timeline to trauma?
I think it depends on the kind of trauma, but I also think that it
But that's not
depends.
fair. To
Why?
say it depends, that
Yes.
brings it back to subjective because what depends for you doesn't depend for them. And
But
now that it's subjective, how can it be an objective fact of a thing?
it's the overwhelming piece. Like it's so much that your body, your psyche, all of that like just doesn't know how to handle it. Like that's trauma. So you think about a traumatic brain injury.
Mhm.
If someone's getting cracked in the side of the head and their skull is pierced and whatever object is actually penetrating the brain,
Mhm.
there is trauma there. And so you're going to have swelling, and it could be that you're going to need a craniotomy where they take a part of your bone, a part of your skull out so that that pressure can get relieved. That is trauma. And so being able to say learned helplessness for trauma for something like that doesn't doesn't apply in my
Yeah,
opinion. And
yeah,
then when you say
100%.
that to,
Because I didn't learn to get cracked in the skull. Yeah, so 100%. Yeah.
so then when you think about like military personnel,
Uh huh.
if they are, my uncle, he fought in Vietnam, and because it was so treacherous over there, he was one of the lucky ones, if you can say that. I mean, he came back, so he absolutely was.
Yeah.
But he married my aunt. This is on my dad's side. He married my dad's sister. Went they like he like as soon as he touched down in Vietnam, hopped off the helicopter. Whoever his person in charge, superior officer, was like, turn it around because you're going back. And he said, you just got married. You have, your whole life ahead of you. These young kids are dying left and right. And apparently he got sent home somehow, some kind of way. That's the way the story was told to me. I just know that he wasn't there for very long. He got
Yeah.
there, boots on the ground, and they sent him right back. But in that short amount of time, whatever sounds, bullets, flying, bombs, all of that, they said that my uncle was walking down the street, normal street, and a car backfired. And whoever was with him turned around and said that my uncle was on the ground,
Yeah.
like in the
Sprawled out.
grass, like trying to duck and cover. So those kinds of things, it's like that's not learned helplessness, I don't think.
Is it not learned though? Because it's the experience. Like, is trauma just the experience? Because he had an experience overseas, right? And obviously, it's not like I wanted to learn these things, but my body adapted and it learned these behaviors. Like, it metamorphosized these behaviors within itself, which is
But
where I
that's
can
where I
say I'm
feel the
open to
over
trauma. Because
Well, that's
like,
where I feel like the
been there now.
overwhelming piece comes in, because you have to, like, your senses, your body, like, we're given everything that we need when we're
Yeah.
placed on this earth, I feel.
Hmm.
And for your body or your system to take something on where it's like, it's just so much that I don't even know what to do with it, that is,
The trauma.
I don't,
Okay.
yeah, that's the trauma part. So I don't think that that is like learned helplessness. Cause I think if you were to say that in a room full of veterans where they're like, they
Yeah.
can't do X, Y, and
Of
Z, or
course
they
not.
speak to their trauma for from
Yeah.
whatever space. If you were to say like, yeah, like your learned helplessness, I think that is something different.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is, I want to learn what that definition is, but I just don't think that it's the same for trauma.
Hmm. Yeah. Very, like I said, very, very, yeah, still open, definitely, very much so. Because like, and that's why one, I'm careful with who I communicate that with, and I do think that is, I'm also one thing I like about podcasts and speaking is the evolution of individuals' life. So if that's how I'm feeling now, I do say that. Like I don't shy away from saying how I'm feeling just because what it may look like.
Well, also,
So
I think it also comes with intent. Like, I don't think that anything that you've said has been in
yeah,
with the intention to,
like bump
disrupt
trauma,
or
like trauma, like
cause. Yeah, I don't think
yeah.
so. No.
Yeah, just awareness, right? To preach, like to preach. There's more. Like there's not even that there's more because I'm right, but there's more to explore. Like I just don't. I'm not a fan. Not gonna say I don't like people. I'm not a fan of just people who just settle with the. And I get everybody's not just like a sponge. Like I love knowledge. I watch documentaries all the time. Anything, everything, so about it.
I used
So
to
I
have
get everybody's not
documentary
a
Sunday.
sponge of like information. And back to religion, I don't like people that just settle for like what's been told. And I think a lot of it is also stem like, and that's why I said I'm very open to the idea that when I say learn helplessness and learn behavior and all those other terms, I'm open to the idea that that is just my friction with the word trauma. I'm very open to that because that's why I rebel. It's like rebellion, right? From a lot of things as well. Cause just because of that. Like I'm tired of it, and I don't like the excuses, and that could be from like my brother just using that all the time because we live similar lives, or maybe you take me out the equation, and I didn't live the same life y'all lived because I also had a dad and a stepmom, but then you take my middle brother and him, neither had a father, all they had was a mom, and they lived a very similar life because they didn't escape like I escaped. One's a six-figure entrepreneur. One still living with my mom, using her as an excuse. He kept going to jail. You see him, and I think that's where the rebellion could come in because I'm just so sick and tired of hearing it. And it's not just him. I hear it from people all over. Like it's just all like people become, for lack of better words, their trauma. And it's like if you just learn, like if you just understand. And now I kind of lean toward where you say, well, that's different or it depends. Because I still think it's subjective, like to say it depends on
Because I
what
also think it's
trauma.
the kind of trauma.
Yeah, because like I said, I believe in physical trauma. Like I understand that you can't like getting knocked in the head 20 times is not learned. Like and then again, as you're getting knocked in the head, your body's learning. But I'm just kidding.
You're just
I
gonna,
mean,
you're
like
like, it's
yeah and no
hold on to
though.
it, don't.
Like yeah, like because it's like your body's now learning that like this blunt for like it's learning this behavior that's happening, and then it's now going to like autonomy is going to naturally kind of react to this new behavior. So like I don't know about brain injury, so this is where you come in. So you can shut me up here, right? Your brain starts to do things to protect itself. Am I wrong? When you start get the blunt force trauma, does it try to protect itself by doing different things which can cause further injury? Because obviously it's not supposed to be protecting itself that way, or how
Well,
does that work?
well, you may
Cause
hear people talk about how they don't remember anything,
uh-huh.
and that is the brain's way. I mean, of course, there's not like, bumpers around the brain to protect itself, so it'll
Yeah.
do things like shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It'll do things, which is where, you blacking out, the body will shut down, and it's going to reset, it's going to reboot. But the brain is not designed to do that over and over and
Yeah.
over and over again, and that's where the trauma comes in, because that's where it's overwhelming. So if you were to take a hit and you hit your head on the door or on a cabinet or something, all right, had a little ding, ouch, don't do it again. But to keep doing it over and an overwhelming amount, that's where we get
Okay.
into
Yeah.
CTE, because your
Yeah.
brain has been traumatized so many times that it's just like there's nothing else for me to do. So you
Okay.
could
Yeah.
black out for things that are very traumatic. I think about people who have been sexually assaulted. you
Mhm.
know, your brain can completely erase that from your mind. There are
Mhm.
things that I was pulling out from therapy or something that I would see or hear. Smell is a huge thing to help with memory,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh my gosh, like I forgot about that.
Mhm.
And it's not like you're trying to
Yeah.
forget. Your brain protects you by removing that. I have a cousin who was thrown from a vehicle um well over a decade ago, and he cannot remember what happened before he got ejected. He said he was leaving the house, was going to work, had planned to stop and pick something up for his girlfriend or something. And he said he remembered coming to on a gurney, and he said he had so much dirt all over him because he had been ejected from the car and obviously rolled and what have you, but the brain protected itself and he can't remember that.
I'm also a Taurus. I don't really believe too much in
Oh,
the
we can wrap this
astrology,
up right now.
and
You're
I'm
not going to
stubborn.
believe a thing I'm saying.
No, and I do, but it's almost like it's not that you're proving the point because, like I said, I'm not like
It's
hundred
just a
percent,
conversation.
and you're literally saying the brain is doing things to protect itself, which is
Yes.
learn. That's it's okay. Cool, cool. So it is doing. It could be both, right? Because it's doing these things to protect. So it's learning these like it's downloading what's happening, and now it's figuring out ways to cope with it, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Because when you bring it back to physicality and like
But
reality,
when it's overwhelmed,
when it's
that's where
but
the
no, it does
trauma
that
comes in.
regardless. Because it does that the first time I get hit with a concussion. It does it. It learns something. It downloads something, and then it
You
now.
may learn to go like this. You know, if you're in a
Uh-huh.
boxing ring and someone just
Yeah.
hauls off and hits you and you're not keeping your hands up, okay, a learned behavior will be like, oh, when this big red boxing glove is coming at my face, maybe I need to swerve or I need to do this because I don't want
Yeah.
it to happen again. But if you are overwhelmingly getting assaulted in whatever way that is, emotionally, sexually, physically, if that is continuing to happen, that is an overwhelming amount of information. Because one time, okay, I'm with this chick, I didn't get her flowers, and she called off and slapped me. Okay, I learned I should probably not do that again.
Yeah.
But if no matter what you do, I'm just sitting here, I'm just playing the game, I just finished yoga, I just got off a plane, but she just constantly hitting you and smacking you and assaulting you, at that point you're overwhelmed and that becomes traumatic because then she could just be going to reach for a cup out of the cabinet. And if you're going like this, that is trauma because
And
you have
but
been
that's a learned
assaulted.
behavior
You've been
because
assaulted but if you've been assaulted over and over and over and over and over again,
it's learned behavior. Now I know that when someone flinches at me, when someone screams, my learned behavior is to someone's going to hit me, regardless if it happens or not. That's learned behavior, right? Like that. That's like it's not obviously like we didn't choose to learn this behavior, but my body has learned through not necessarily learned helplessness, but through this experience,
okay.
traumatic or
If we're
non-traumatic.
talking about a learned behavior, that makes more sense than
Yeah.
learned
Yeah, help, and
helplessness.
that's why I had to, because I said both at the beginning, and then I think I leaned more to learn helplessness, but it's like because of the experience, traumatic or not, right? Because one hit in the head, right? Can we agree that's not a traumatic experience?
Depends on how hard the
Well,
hit
yeah,
is.
you're right, but like I still learned something. You touch a stove, that's not a traumatic experience.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Overwhelming amount of pain.
Well, if you tap it, that's not overwhelming. Now, if you keep your
Me
hand there,
myself, 6'5", shoot, I only need to get burnt once, okay?
all right. So you fall in, you scrape your knee. Is that traumatic?
It
See,
can
this is all
be.
subjective again. That's all. But that's why I say. But see, that's so anything could be a trauma. The sun rose this morning. It was too bright. I'm traumatized.
I mean, it is subjective in that sense because
Or is it
what
not just learned
you
behavior?
well, what
The sun rose, so now I blink before I open and look at the sun.
well, so many things are subjective and we have to acknowledge that
Yeah.
because the way that I grew up in requiring perfection and go outside and play and don't come back to the streetlights come on and don't talk back to your elders, like all that stuff,
Yeah.
that is completely different than what people, young people today are being brought up in.
Yeah.
So when you say something to a person your age who could still be living at home with their parents and had been for 7 or 8 years, just kind of coasting along, not all their needs are being met. There's no real drive or force to get up and get out on their own. And if the parents are coming to you and they're like, hey, 26-year-old son that we've been supporting for 7 years, what's the plan? For that young person to be like, they're attacking me.
Yeah.
They are attacking me. Okay, that's subjective. But
Yeah.
for them, that could be completely traumatic. I wouldn't see that as traumatic. I'm
Yeah.
looking at it like I've been on borrowed time getting the hookup at my parents' house for close to a decade, and my time has run out because now they're asking me, okay, what you gonna do? Where you going? What's the plan? I would be expecting that.
Yeah.
But a
But
young
so that
person who has been coddled, if you are asked for a
yeah.
plan and an exit strategy, they can absolutely see that as like, how dare you? You're not going to keep paying all my bills and letting me live here. I'm almost 30, but I still got to move out.
I think that just brings the point me to me back where it's like trauma's a crutch. Cause like
So I think in that instance, it can be used as a crutch.
but
But when
at
you're
that point
talking
I feel like
about
it's every instance. Regardless
if you're
regard
using it for excuses, but
not necessarily.
if it's your experience and you've got a mom who's yelling and you freeze and your heart starts to have palpitations and you're like, okay, you're
Your
not going to
body's
get hit, you're
learning to
not
do
going to get
this
hit.
as your mom screams. Your body's behavior. Behavior isn't always conscious, but your body's learning this behavior now. Like that's anxiety's built. Anxiety doesn't. You don't. I don't want to say you're not born with anxiety, but like, because I don't know the science of that. You may be born when you wake up, like, oh, I'm scared, and your heart may be pounding fast. But like, your body begins to learn how to do these different things. Like, let's say, for example, you aren't born with anxiety. Then that means your body builds anxiety through experiences, traumatic or non-traumatic, right? If we're using traumatic, because it could be serious or non-serious, like regardless of the thing. Okay, go ahead. I hear it.
Maybe we can come to a consensus by
Okay,
just saying it's learned. Cuz
yeah,
when you say
learn
learned behavior, that to me
needs action.
speaks to something of your volition. So like, okay, a mom is yelling at her kid, I'm choosing to go like this and to get my heart rate up and for me to think, okay, I might get hit. So I'm not behaving like I'm choosing to do this, but if my body has learned this response, I can say that your body can learn things, but learn behavior and learn helplessness make me
So
pause.
I think we can leave helplessness, but
Okay.
now I'm trying to see what behavior,
Yeah,
because
let's look
is
that up. Are you
behavior a
looking it
choice?
up?
Yeah, I'm looking it
Well,
up.
help me out. Fill me in. I read you trauma.
Is behavior the way in which one acts or conducts? Hold on, oneself,
That seems
especially towards
volition.
others, the way in which an animal person, the way in which a natural phenomenon or machine works. So once again, like how you broke it down just now is that you said you don't want to say learned behavior and just leave it as learned because behavior feels like you're choosing that, which obviously we aren't choosing the things we do. But by that definition, behavior is not a choice. It's just something innate that happens. So I think it could still be learned behavior, which is a vocabulary that Adlerin uses to replace trauma, because one behavior is not my choice, but my body innately, unconsciously decided to do something on its own. Like any action, that's not, I'm not going to make up words. What does it say? Any action or any act that one conducts oneself is behavior. Well,
But
it
that's
says towards
volition.
others. You said what?
That's volition. Like you can,
All right, hold
that's
on.
a
I don't know
choice.
that word.
Volition means you're choosing, your choice. So when people say like be on your best behavior,
Uh huh.
you're choosing how you're going to act.
But
So
that's
when
because
you
they said be on your best. They gave you what to do. Like they gave you
yes,
the
but
thing.
I mean I think it's
But if they just
a
said
small
behave,
percentage of people who just like, okay, your given behavior is just douche.
yeah.
You're just a douchebag. That's just how you were born. That's just what you were brought up in. No, I think that you make a conscious decision to be rude or to,
Yeah.
act a certain way. So that's why I say a volition. Like that's your choice to behave that way.
All right. I'm being. I'm really
Agreed.
not. This. I'm actually having fun here. So I'm about
Good.
to ask. Right. I'm just asking.
Yes.
I'm asking. Is volition automatically in behavior? Because now I want to know is that because that's what you're saying. You're saying behavior is a choice, but by the definition of volition, it refers to the power or act of making a conscious choice or decision. So, like, if I said learn
But
volition, then
see,
obviously learn
conscious
that.
volition.
But no, it says conscious. But so now is
Yeah, like
behavior.
aware of the choice that you're making. A
Yeah,
conscious
every
volition.
behavior
Yeah.
you're not aware of though, because when I scream, that like your body jumping is still a behavior. It's still an act,
Yes.
but you didn't choose that act. So behavior by itself is just the act that happens, not a choice, unconscious or conscious. It's just the act. So volition is the choice of an action. Behavior is just simply the act. So I'm not choosing to jump that someone scrolls, but that's the behavior my body just my body did.
Okay. I think we're coming to a nice consensus here
Okay,
where we can
smart.
both walk away with some
We can start with
agreements.
learned. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I learned a lot though,
Oh,
and
good.
now I got to read again. So I just because I strongly believe trauma or no trauma. Once you become an adult, you no longer can use that as an excuse. Trauma, no, if it exists, don't excuse. You cannot, you no longer can because you now have the choice to one get awareness, gain knowledge, and
That's
choose
the
to do other things. You know what I'm saying? So it's
But what if
like
you don't?
you have the choice. You may not have the resources, but you have the choice.
But what if you don't have the knowledge? Because I think that's
Well,
a
you know,
huge
yeah, that's the
difference.
thing. Yeah, you may not have the knowledge, but like you can get the knowledge.
There are adults who don't have the knowledge. Because
There's
just like you
adults
didn't
that have
have
access
the
to internet. We have. I can't allow that. Homeless or not homeless,
Yeah,
the library is
but
free.
just like so it's the exposure thing, right? Expansion exposure because if you like that there are people who are college grads and
Yeah.
all those kinds of things who are like, "Well, you should have known about college tours. You should have known about, doing better in school and X, Y, and Z." But how if you didn't have the knowledge, if you didn't have the exposure? So there
Yeah.
are adults who absolutely have nowhere near even you being able to live outside of the country. There are people in
Yeah.
their 30s, 40s, and
Yeah.
50s
Never
and
left.
beyond who are like, I've never left the mainland, baby. Not even Canada.
Yeah. I get.
And so
I
you
get it.
can't look at them and be like, oh, it's a choice for you to be ignorant of travel. It's a choice that you don't know about TSA pre check. It's a choice that like all of those things have to do with exposure. So there are people who will use
Yeah.
any excuse, but from lack of knowledge. There are people now who are in retirement from sports who are like, oh, well, I had no idea about CTE. I had no idea about X, Y, and Z. Had I known, I would have made some different choices. So you got to give some people some grace because not
I'm gonna give them grace
everybody's going to have the education and exposure to
only
get
because of
themselves
you.
educated or healed.
I'm gonna give you grace only because of you. I feel like you that yeah, and because that's my lived experience of this thing. So because there's things I have no clue about. So I definitely
Yet.
give grace on that. Yeah,
A
yeah,
little
definitely.
close to the mic there so I can hear you.
Oh, I was like, I definitely give grace because of you. Because of you, I give grace because there's a lot of things I don't know about,
Well, I've
and
had,
these are my lived experiences, so that's why I know about it. So
yes,
I
but
get that.
your exposure,
My exposure was there, so I
yeah.
get it. I get it.
I
Give it
had
to
a
you.
conversation with someone who said that they thought that being obese was a choice and they make all these excuses and et cetera, et cetera. And
That's the athlete in me. I'm just kidding.
well, I think this person was an athlete as well, but to learn that it's actually in some cases a disease or an illness, where you have an addiction. And if you don't have experience with addiction, you've never, had that,
Yeah.
you wouldn't understand. But not having a concrete mind and giving people grace like you do and having that consideration of I don't have a food addiction, but maybe someone who is bedbound and can't even wash their own body, I might be able to consider that they have an addiction to
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And that's why
Maybe.
I'm scared of taking the addiction. That's why I chose clinical mental health. So you can choose clinical, you can choose adolescence, or you can choose addiction. I mean, adolescence or addiction. Was it? Yeah, adolescent, or I think it was like child, or I don't know. Didn't choose addiction, and because I believe in like, I do believe that like, and this is the last thing because I know we've been on the phone for like you
We're
probably
having a
got
great
something to do.
time. We'll wrap it up after this. Okay.
I feel like although there's a lot of great coaches that never played the game of football, the best coach is always someone who's done it. Now, granted, you don't have to be an addict to go to school and learn about addiction counseling and then counsel people on addiction. And I do strongly feel that it'd be best to be able to be resonated with. Granted, I know there's probably a lot of great addiction counselors who've never addicted to anything, which granted, I also think everyone's addicted to something at some point in their life. Maybe not
Carmex.
as, you said what?
Carmex. The
Carmex?
chapstick.
Oh, yeah.
That's my addiction. My one thing. Like I got to have it.
So
It's in my
everybody
car,
has
it's in my purse, it's
something.
in my jacket pockets, everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right though. Everybody has something. It's just about what it is and like how severe it is. Kind of like trauma, right? If trauma's still real, how severe is the trauma, right? Because that's trauma, and getting beaten in the head 1,000 times is trauma. Too. So like everybody has some type of addiction. But with that, I just contradicted myself. But anyway, I digress. I'm a walking contradiction. Because I live in duality within
You
my head.
cannot drop the mic on your walking contradiction.
No, yeah, I no. If you aren't, something's wrong. If you ever, you can't be concrete in there because you had the more you live life, the more you learn. Now, obviously, you can't
Yeah,
be
but you
concrete in
can
things like you have foundational things, but like the more you live, the more you learn. That doesn't mean you change your opinion on everything. But
everything isn't duality though.
no, everything's yin and yang. I'm a yogi. Yin and yang. There is not hot without cold. There is not good without bad. You can't tell me one thing in this earth that has no opposite. There's always yin and yang,
Well,
and
yeah,
with
they're
that there's
opposites, but
duality.
living in duality where everything is duality, that can't be.
Well, that's just a
Not
perspective.
everything.
Unfortunately, that's just how I think though. So that I'm not saying everything as a fact is that, and I live through a duality like landscape. So like everything has this or that.
Okay. So
Everything's
would
a
it be
choice or
fair
a
to say
decision.
that you
Like
have a duality mindset
yeah,
versus saying everything is duality?
did I say that or did I say I live in duality?
I feel like you said everything has
Everything okay.
duality to it.
Yeah. Well, not well. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Everything has an opposite.
Start it
Everything.
back up from the top. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
It's a whole nother episode here.
Right? I think we're gonna
Right.
have to chop this into maybe two episodes, but this is good. This was
That's
great.
fine.
You are a fantastic guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much.